We live on a unique planet. The best evidence we have suggests that over billions of years, a molten rock surrounded by poisonous gases was transformed by biological life into a wonderful garden. Forests represent a climax equilibrium, where over evolutionary time, diverse species living in symbiosis have created, naturally regulated, and continuously renewed the atmosphere, the hydrological cycle, and the fertile living soils. Even the fossil fuels we are so blithely burning are the remains of ancient forests. For countless eons, the forests naturally developed, shaped only by the forces of nature. But as the last great ice age receded, human beings emerged as the dominant species and began to rival natural forces in altering the environment. All cultures have exploited and shaped the products of the forest for their own use. All over the world, wood has been appreciated for its usefulness and treasured for its beauty. When you come into a natural environment like this African rainforest here in Rwanda, you can't help but notice the differences in humidity, temperature, and even the levels of oxygen. The difference between this and human-altered environments is the profusion of biodiversity, the enormous quantities of biomass, and everywhere here is decaying organic matter.
This is the largest mountainous forest remaining in this region, the Arbenton Rift. And having different species, biological species, which are endemic, which can only be found in this area.
Now, it is said that 70% of the waters in Rwanda come from Nyungwe. The rivers flowing in the east feed the River Nile. Then the rivers flowing in the west feed the River Congo.
The water here is not only used by Rwandese. It goes throughout Africa, it goes up to Egypt. No one understands that if water is going there, it is coming from somewhere. It's coming from a functional system.
But since the beginning of settled agriculture, approximately 10,000 years ago, vast areas of the earth have been altered by human beings. Human ingenuity has generated surpluses of food and allowed unprecedented population growth. It has also created tremendous wealth and privilege for some, while sadly simultaneously consigning others to poverty. All too often our impacts have disrupted the delicate balance of nature, artificially elevating evaporation rates, raising temperatures, and leading to losses of biological diversity. Over broad areas we have contributed to hydrological dysfunction, causing increased incidence of flooding, mudslides, and droughts, and leading to massive growth of deserts. We have depleted the fertility of the living soils, lowering agricultural productivity and contributing to the very real possibility of widespread famine. In 1995, I began to document the Loess Plateau Watershed Rehabilitation Project, an ambitious program aimed at restoring the cradle of Chinese civilization. Generally considered to be the second place on Earth after Mesopotamia, where settled agriculture began, over historical time, the Loess Plateau was fundamentally ecologically destroyed by human impact. The same thing has happened in many parts of the world, and the lessons learned in the Loess Plateau are broadly relevant worldwide. One thing that became apparent early on is the connection between damaged environments and human poverty. In many parts of the world, there's been a vicious cycle. Continuous use of the land has led to subsistence agriculture, and generation by generation, this has further degraded the soils. The vital question we have to ask is, can this destructive process be reversed? The Chinese government, with World Bank technical and financial assistance, believed it could be. Chinese scientists and engineers used geographical information systems to precisely map each watershed, and participatory assessment to engage the local people. After years of careful planning, they decided to limit economic land and return marginal lands to a more natural state. Not everyone immediately agreed.
种树嘛，哎，我树啊，跑道的地现在都栽树嘛，北片都跑道的地都现在栽树啊。我看这些，就像我说，我在我死呀嘛，看你们吃，哎，吃着西边儿嘛。
When the people were convinced that the changes were in their own benefit, entire communities were engaged. They built small dams to infiltrate water, terraced the designated economic land, and planted in both the ecological and the economic land. When I first filmed Mr. Ta Fuyuan and his colleagues back in 1995, I had no idea this initiative could achieve such dramatic results. The effort that people put into converting their slopes into terraces has resulted in a marked increase in agricultural productivity. The higher yields are directly related to the return of natural vegetation in the surrounding ecological land. The World Resources Institute, together with the Global Partnership on Forest Landscape Restoration, has identified over 1 billion hectares of land where forests have been removed and could be rehabilitated. There are also vast areas of grasslands that could be restored. And yet, the forested area of the Earth continues to shrink. Recently, I saw this dramatically illustrated in Bolivia, where the forests protect the headwaters of the Amazon River. Here in the foothills of the Andes, slash and burn agriculture is taking place today. The people who are doing this think that they are getting some short-term economic gain, but what's the loss to biodiversity, biomass, soil fertility, and hydrological function? After years of studying this, I began to question why this happens repeatedly around the world. The consistent pattern suggests a link between our economic thinking and degradation. The economy reflects our understanding and our values. Currently, the global economy is based on production and consumption, and the degradation of functional ecosystems is called an externality. This is logically flawed, as functional ecosystems that are providing us with air, water, food, and energy are clearly the most valuable assets that we have. In many places that are now considered among the poorest places on Earth, relatively small populations live on large areas of land. The rights of the indigenous peoples and their unique cultures have often been affected, as the growing global production and consumption model has imposed itself virtually everywhere. Here on the Inner Niger Delta in Mali, it's possible to see the effects of valuing productivity over function. We fail to understand that the Earth's water, its unique species of life, and its climate are regulated from places just like this. When these systems are fully functional, everybody on Earth benefits. But if we fail to value these essential functions, the local people are forced to degrade them just to survive. What's the value of the Earth's water, or biodiversity, or climate regulation? How could we consign to poverty those of us whose task it is to protect these essential functions? Acknowledging the real value of ecosystems could profoundly improve the prospects for hundreds of millions of the world's poorest people. Innovative collaborative partnerships like the one between Norway and Guyana that is already protecting this forest in Iwak-Rama are showing what this could look like. Wherever we look on the earth, all the evidence tells us that forests are necessary for life. We have to protect all remaining functional forests in order to regulate the Earth's climate. But simultaneously with protecting the last remaining pristine and functional old-growth forests, we need to restore all the lands where ecosystems have been degraded. Restoration helps mitigate and adapt to climate changes we're already committed to. Restoration can employ large numbers of people in meaningful and necessary work. And restoration creates a development trajectory that leads to a sustainable future in harmony with nature. This is the Anthropocene era. If we understand the true value of ecosystem function, we have the ability to heal ourselves and the Earth.